It's hard for everybody. And the people that actually go to the show and get up and stand behind that table have something over everybody who just sits home, which is like they're there. You literally, like 80% of this is just showing up. So if you literally just show up behind a table, you're putting yourself ahead of most people because it's way easier. It's way easier to design an ad campaign than it is to go to a show and sit there for 3 days while most people ignore you.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, on to the show with your host, ALAB Barnard.
Hey bosses, if you have an author website or are thinking about getting one, I have a special offer for you. Stacey Sowers of Authors Mojo builds websites, is a technology coach for indie authors, and is my co-author for the book Build Your Author Website. She's also an indie author herself, which makes this so exciting. For listeners of this podcast, Stacey is offering a free author website consultation. If you already have a website and want some feedback for improving it, she'll do a comprehensive evaluation of your site. If you don't yet have a website, but are thinking about taking that next step, she'll walk you through what you need to know to have a beautiful and effective author website. To take advantage of this offer and get a free author website consultation, go to authorlikeaboss.com/mojo. Hello, everybody. We are here today with Russell Nohelty. He's back. He's amazing. We love having him here. And let me tell you a little about him. Russell Nohelty is a USA Today bestselling author and speaker. He's raised over $100,000 on Kickstarter, built a mailing list of over 25,000 people, and tabled at more than 100 events since 2016. Now he teaches creatives how to live a complete and successful life through his teaching academy, The Complete Creative. Russell, I am so excited to have you back here.
I'm excited too. And I'm excited to hear that intro because it's the first time I've ever heard it actually written, like spoken out loud to me since I wrote it.
Oh, it's good. Because I'm like, ooh, this is different the last time. Because last time you had only done you've done more Kickstarters. You've built your mailing list. And I know that you're focusing on the complete creative in a different way than before. So I'm really excited.
Me too.
For those people who haven't listened to the episode, one, you should check that out. It's amazing. It's one of the first episodes. So you'd have to go down, look for Russell. But for those of you who haven't, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your author journey?
Sure. So I'm going to go back a little bit, but fast forward quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I started as a creative wanting to be a cinematographer and then a director. And I failed miserably at both of those things, along with being a fashion photographer. So by the time I turned 29, I had failed 3 companies and I failed 2 others in my early 30s. So I started writing because it was the only thing that I had control over. I have trust issues. So directing took a huge crew and money. Cinematography took someone hiring you. Editing, everything else took somebody hiring you. Except for writing. When you're writing, you create the story from scratch. And so I went from directing, I got in a pretty bad car accident in 2008. And then I started writing screenplays. And screenplays led to me getting my first manager, led to me getting into comic books, and led to me finally getting into novels in 2012. So I've been writing since 2006. I directed a movie in 2007 and a couple of shorts before then. But I really started being a writer as my primary function in 2010 when I started in comic books, and then 2011 when I started doing novels. So I've been doing this for about 8 years, and I really didn't have any success until 2017. Before then, I was kind of a journeyman. I did a bunch of shows. I released projects, made a few $1,000s here and there. I've been writing full time since 2015, but my breakout came with the release of my anthology, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, on Kickstarter, which raised $27,000 and was followed up a few months later by a book called Pixie Dust, which raised another $25,000. And And that really sort of solidified me in the world. Last year, I released a book that did $40,000 on Kickstarter during its launch. And during that whole time, I've been building my mailing list and doing all of the marketing things that everybody is so scared about in the author community.
Right? Because nobody grew up saying, I want to be a writer and then I want to market my books.
No, but see, here's the thing is once you failed a few hundred times, you start understanding. So my first 3 companies, the only thing that was consistent was me. And what ended up happening after I basically almost bankrupted my companies, I had no money left. I had moved to another city and literally had nothing except a very supportive wife, is you start going, well, what is the common denominator in me? And it ended up being that nobody knew who I was. And I set out to change that. I got a job at Aflac and then Sprint and then opened my own Verizon dealership and started being a competent to very successful salesperson. And suddenly people started reading my work. And I really don't care about the marketing part. I care about the people reading my work part, because this job is way, way, way better when people read your work, enjoy it, and tell you how much they love you.
Oh my gosh. That is maybe one of the truest things you've ever said.
It's so much better. It's spending hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on a story and then having 3 people buy it and being out $1,000 and I've been there before and it's horrible. And it's way better when people are reading your work, and the way people read your books and your work is through marketing and sales and having people get excited about it. And then what ends up happening is you have this big community of people who like your work, thousands of people who just like you. And they're all like, your work is great and it's amazing. And I understand that not liking the process to get there. But once you get there, it's pretty amazing, because every day you go online and people are like, you're great. I like the thing you're doing. Thank you so much for doing the thing you did. I read your book and it was great. Every day, emails every day about how great your book is. And you only get there from the marketing part of it. Yeah. So the marketing part of it is just a process. Doing the shows is just a process to get to where I wanted to be and where I enjoy being now, which is when I send an email, hundreds of people go and buy things from me that I wrote out of my head.
I want to share something with you, because Russell does builders and I am now doing one of my first builders with him. But if you want to find out about email builders, go ahead and listen to the first episode. That's not what we're focusing on. But I signed up to do one of your builders, Russell, and somebody who is also participating in the builder messaged me and he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that, how much I love your podcast. And I found Russell because of your podcast and you guys are both great. And I was like, oh,
that's so nice. And see, what if you had thousands of people like that? That's just it's great. It's great.
Yes, it is really great.
The process is harrowing and horrible, and the slog is still there every day. But I know at the end of it, more people will read and love my work. And that's why I do all of these things. That's why I used to go to 40 shows a year, because they got in front of people who would buy my work and then come back and tell me how much they loved it and then buy a second thing from me.
Yeah. So and I told you before, because that's the one I want to focus on, because I've had a few people that I've been talking to who are thinking about doing some of their first shows. And I was like, who knows about shows better than anybody that I know?
I literally wrote the book on it.
Yeah. Better than anybody that I know. Russell knows about shows. And so I was like, hey, Russell, can you talk to us about shows? So can you tell us, I think, just first off, why did you start doing shows? And I guess some of the pros and cons of shows. Let's just start big and then go little.
Sure.
Okay.
So I started doing shows because in-person sales is the easiest way to make a fan. It is. So I do comics, and in comics, that's what you do. You do shows. There's no other real path. I mean, there's other theoretical paths, but the people just say, go to shows. So you go to shows. And you spend quite a bit of money on shows. And the first few shows, you split tables and you hope to break even. But I did shows because everybody else was doing shows. And when I went to shows, before I did shows, no one would buy my work. And suddenly at shows, people would be like, I'll buy this. And that's a pretty good feeling. So I just kept going in that direction. and figuring out how to monetize it and do it better and, make a profit and all of that stuff. So the pros to shows, you asked two questions. So I think that's the end of the first one.
Yep.
The second one is the pros and the cons. So the pros are, it takes somewhere between 7 and 14 touches generally to make somebody a fan or more, especially online. When you're in person, you could do the same thing in 1 to 3 touches, at least 1 to 6. So way less touches before somebody tries and becomes a fan of your work, especially if you're willing to give stuff away for free. That's the biggest plus. The second is the community. There's a community of other people there that are also creators. And so they've now paid to enter the show and are on the same level. So just by paying to enter and being at that show, you suddenly are in a club that you're not on when you're on the other side of that table. And I've been an attendee and an exhibitor. And one of the best feelings was when I started exhibiting and suddenly people who wouldn't give me the time of day are start talking to me like we're peers. So it's a really easy way by paying a couple $100 or paying $10 or whatever the show is to suddenly be a peer of somebody else because you're now doing the same show. You're at the same place doing the same show as them.
So you're saying there's other authors who may be significantly larger names than you, but you're both or let's just say, for example, and you're both at the same show and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're one of us. One.
Yes, exactly. Now, here's the thing is if you make crap, I don't know how to tell you to go to shows if you make crap. So I'm making an assumption that you make great books that are best in quality. And that's what I've always done. So when people would look at my work, they'd be like, oh, this is really amazing. And I would give free books to them and I would be friends with them and I would give them advice and what I found out and generally try to be helpful at shows with people, whether they were on the other side of the booth or exhibitors with me. But people don't take into account that you are suddenly in a club. You're in a club because you paid money or you were granted access to be part of this show. So of the thousands of people or hundreds of people or tens of people that go to a show, only a few of them are behind the table. You also get to come in early and leave late from the show so you can talk to people and hang out with people and start to build a name for yourself that way. So those are the pros, two of the biggest pros. There are a lot of littler pros. If you're a little bit further along, so this I don't think is going to make sense to people who don't have books out, but once you start getting your books ready for publication or have a couple out, the single best thing that you have is market research in front of you. You know what person is buying your books. You know what you're saying to them to get them to buy. You know what makes them light up. You know where they laugh, where they cry. You know all of this information about people in a way that you never do online. I have this course, Build a Rabid Fan Base, and the first module is about finding your ideal customer. And part of it is a lot of it is interacting with that person. But, the best interaction is face to face because you then you can practice 100 pitches and see, okay, this is what makes this person light up when I talk about it. This is what they don't like. This is when they bought. And you can actually see the moment when they're going to buy. Which is that's something your best friend won't tell you. That's something that you don't know exactly when they're going to buy. They were going to buy anyway. But to take a stranger through the process and make them and know when they were going to buy or when they were on the precipice of buying is great. There's nothing like firsthand data.
I agree with you 100%. And I remember when I was taking courses about marketing before I had a product and they were like, you should know, they're like, know your avatar, know your ideal customer. And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, imagine them. And they had you just make it up. Like, what do they eat? What's their job? And I was like, what is this for? Cause it was so hard because it was so abstract. But now on the other side, I'm listening to you and I'm like, of course that makes sense. Like that you would want to know exactly who that person is. But I wouldn't say make it up in the abstract. I'd say just go talk to somebody.
That's what I say all of the time. I mean, like I said, it's the first module of the course. And the way people fail is, so 99 times out of 100, when I ask people who did you make this book for? Or who is the person who's going to buy this book? They'll either say me or give some abstract answer. And I'm like, okay, well, that was marketing gibberish. I know I'm a marketing expert, but please don't give me gibberish. What one human, singular human, and name a person who is not your mother yourself or your immediate family and friends who you made this book for. Who is going to buy this book? And they're like, and then they again go, a 45-year-old. But I'm like, no, one singular human. And we go through that for about 10 minutes until they finally think they come up with someone. I'm like, cool, go test that now. And go test it with 1,000 people. And you know what you test that really quickly with? At a show, because it's filled. A fourth thing that I just remembered. I knew there was one that I was forgetting and I was stalling a little bit. Is you're around hundreds of people who have self-selected that they are nerds like you. That they are your kind of nerd. If you're in the right place. So like I make blasphemous books, fantasy books, and post-apocalyptic books. Not going to go to a Christian convention because they are probably going to like string me up. One time I did a show in a church and I was like, "You're sure I should come? You know, you've read my work and enjoy it." And they were like, "Yes, you should come." And it was kind of weird to be in a church when my book's about killing the devil and whether he's the bad guy. It's like, it was weird.
It was weird.
Assuming that you're going to a place like a book convention or a comic convention, or I do horror books, some books that have horror elements, like dark fantasy books. So like a horror convention, my books are very anime inspired. So manga convention. If you're around the humans that you should be selling, these are people who have self-selected to be there, taken a day out of their life. They're not just scrolling through Facebook. They are like motivated to buy then, or at least interested in the topic that you are supposedly interested in.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful too, because on social media, you're like, okay, what is the hashtag that might relate that my ideal readers might be? What's that? And you're kind of guessing until you figure it out. And even then, it's not that in-person interaction. Whereas it's a really powerful self-selection to take your time and your money to go to a convention or a show on a topic. Like that's an investment.
So I've talked a lot about the good parts. Let's talk about the bad parts.
Okay. Okay.
It's expensive. Generally, like the good shows are not cheap. I do recommend when you start out, until you know what you're doing, like just go to whatever the cheapest show you can find. I spent 3 years going to swap meets and like cheap shows in like comic book stores and bookstores and such, until I like could very easily describe the human that I wanted it. But they're expensive and they're time consuming. You know, most of the conventions I do now are 2 days to 5 days. San Diego Comic-Con is Wednesday to Sunday plus like a 2-day recovery period. It's a week. It's a week you're not writing. It's a week you're not doing any other marketing. Also, there's a lot of competition that is there and a finite amount of money. If the average person comes to a show with like $60 and they have to eat, they have to walk around, they have to do all this other stuff. So like you have to be like a very good salesperson and or very good at targeting your market. Cause it's not all about just like, I tend to talk all day, shockingly, but I have friends who are very good at like designing their booth to bring over the right people, and they make money by like in a much different way than I do, but they're good at understanding the aesthetic of what draws their perfect customer over. You also have to talk to humans.
Yeah. Like,
I don't know, like most authors that I know are introverted, and they say they could never talk to other humans or never want to talk to humans. Say it's going to be really tough for you, because like the people who read your books are humans, and they're going to at some point want to interact with you. There's also a lot of people who just don't care about the thing that you do, even at a show. So it's a lot of rejection. Online, it's a lot easier to be rejected than in person when you've just spent 6 hours on your feet and talked to 3 people. So there's a lot of, training your body to be able to be on your feet for 12 hours, being okay with watching over and over and over again as people just walk by a thing that you poured your heart and soul into, just to find the one person that will like sit and talk to you. It's hard for me. And I've been done this a lot of times before, but those things are not easy mentally or physically.
Okay. So I have a question. So I think it's a good idea for people to have done some shows just to do them, know that you can do them, have that experience. But for those people who are introverts, and because your skill set is talking to people, what kind of things, like how do you open that interaction? Like when people are walking by, or maybe they kind of slow down in front of your booth, let's say.
So my friend, I have a couple of very introverted friends who've done panels with me on this topic. My friend Madeline, she will literally just stand and hold out a bookmark, and she will offer it to them, and then if they take it, she will gently nudge them and say, "Hey, have you ever heard of our work before?" And that gets people into the door. My other friend, Barbara, who works for Fanbase, who is one of the owners of Fanbase Press, she just smiles, and when someone looks, she says, "Have you ever heard of our work before?" And people walk over and say no, and say, "Hey, which one caught your eye?" So those are a couple of ways. I don't know if you're an artist, you can just draw, and oftentimes just the act of drawing at your table will draw people over. I think that that's not a great strategy, but it's a strategy that some artists use successfully. You can set up your table a lot nicer than other tables are set up to draw the eye in to where you're drawing in. But at some point, you have to interact, even if it's just, "Are you finding everything okay?" or "Hello," or something. Can't tell you how many times I've made a sale because the 20 people had been walking through, and all I did was say, "Hey, how you doing today?" You can't be the kind of human who only sits back and waits for a sale, because there's so much sensory overload that people will just keep walking.
Okay. So then once you say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" and they slow down and they start chatting with you, let's say you go back and forth a little bit, like, "Oh, this is my book, da, 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 da," what have you. And then a lot of people that I talk to, I think the part that they have the biggest challenge at is the asking them to buy or making that offer. And you have all this experience in sales. So what are your recommendations for doing that?
So I hate when people put prices on the table, because then people will just walk by. I'm looking for two very specific things. If somebody picks up a book and then looks at the back, it means they're looking for a price. Usually. It could mean that so if you're an author, I recommend you do a con exclusive cover that has a different cover and no information on the back, or very little information on the back, because then they have to engage with you. But what I'm like, the back of my book, Katrina Hates Dead Shit, if you look back and all it says is "The apocalypse sucks balls." That's it. All it has is the price and that one sentence. And so they have to open it up. And if they look in the back to see the price and then open it up, then I know that I have a very good potential for a sale. But most people will not buy from you. Like, the problem is that sales is like a bell curve, and you have to have enough people to have a randomly distributed sample. And most people talk to 5 or 10 people in a day. And that is not enough to maybe even get one sale, or they engage with 1 or 2 people an hour. And that's just not enough. You need to engage with a lot of people so that your sales fall into a randomly distributed sample. So you can know that you're going to make, if you talk to 100 people an hour, 10 are going to buy. And then you can work on the metrics of like how to get 5 people to buy, or how to talk to 200 people by hiring help or something like that. But it's really tough to only talk to a couple of people and make the numbers that you're looking to even break even. The truth is that moment of like, do you want to buy it, comes after, all right, so I got to try to remember my book now. So there's 4 pieces. The first is the asking someone in. And then I like to ask 2 questions. I like to have 2 things on my table. And then I ask, okay, do you like girls that kick butt or psychological mind screws? And depending on what they answer to that question, I'll show them this was back in the day, I'll show them either Katrina or Ichabod. My book, Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, which is about a psychopath that escapes a mental asylum. So it's psychological horror. And depending on what they say, I will ask that question. And then I will give them my little pitch, which is the sentence. And I'll say, Katrina is about a girl who gets sick of living during the apocalypse. She sets out to help to kill the devil. If people like that, then I will start adding little pieces of flavor into it and say, So I haven't done a show in a long time. So you're catching me while I'm rusty.
I'm sorry.
So the artist now draws for Marvel. It's a complete story. It's done on a high quality art gloss paper. It's hardcover. There are going to be a book and 2 sequels in it. And then often I'll offer a discount if they get it right then. And be like, it's usually 20, but if you get it right now, 30. If you do it right now, I'll do it for 25 or something like that. If they're not, so I have all of these things in my back pocket, but it's because I know what somebody is looking like when they're going to buy.
Okay.
And if they're not going to buy, I try and get them on a mailing list so that they'll buy later.
Okay. 2 questions.
Hang on. First, I want to make sure that people. So there's no moment where you know exactly where someone's going to buy. This is the beauty of sales and the frustration of it, because so much of it is metrics, but it also has an art to it. Just like setting up a sales page or your blurb, there's an art and a science to it. So, but the thing is, you have to ask. You have to find a way to ask. So do you want to get it? Or do you want to join our mailing list? Or something like that.
Okay. And I think it's easiest when it's kind of, when you have a kind of, not scripted necessarily, but you don't have to come up with what you're going to ask every time. You know what you're going to say, and then give them that opportunity. So it's not like this, what do I say now? It's, do you think you're going to get it?
Well, this was what makes online sales easier, because you put your sales page and you just drive. So the reason that marketing works online is because you drive a whole bunch of traffic, and you know that if you pay 10 cents a click and it takes 10 clicks to get a sale, that sale is worth $1, and you can build your marketing around that. The problem with and then you can optimize, but everybody is seeing the same pitch. The problem with in-person sales is that even if everyone hears the same pitch, you have to interact with them, and so it makes each interaction unique. But the same thing of like, you have to send 1,000 clicks to get that bell curve distribution is the same at a show. You just have to keep doing it enough that you know what the highest propensity is for someone to buy, and know that if you talk to 10 people, you'll get a sale, or 2 people, you'll get a sale. Okay.
So quick question, because you've referenced it a couple times, what is the name of your book where you do cover this?
Sell Your Soul: How to Build Your Creative Career.
Okay. So you guys, that's on Amazon. The other thing is, you kind of quickly mentioned, if they aren't going to buy, I get them on my mailing list. How do you do that?
I have a tablet.
Okay.
And it is loaded with MailChimp Subscribe. And MailChimp Subscribe, I download and then put it into my programs and the list at the end of every day. So I'll be honest, like, I get 1,000 people on my mailing list a week now, so it's hard for me to like do this at shows. But when I wasn't getting 1,000 people on my mailing list, you better believe I was doing this all the time. Now I only get people who buy, but there were times where I wanted people on my mailing list. So what I would do is I would put, like, I knew the show wasn't going to be great, but I knew that it had a lot of traffic and I could use it to get a bunch of people on my mailing list. So there are shows that I paid for that I would buy $500 in products and offer a product offer something every day of the show to get people on my mailing list. And I would get hundreds of people on my mailing list, never thousands, but hundreds of people, because all I was focused on was my mailing list. But how I get people on my mailing list is if they like a book, but they're not sure, I say, well, you could get the first issue. So my books are an issue. So you're going to have to make this work for you. You can get the first issue of Katrina if you join our mailing list, plus Ichabod and a couple of other things. If you're doing books, then Mike, maybe, okay, so there's a novella in this series, which is standalone. You can see if you like the series, and I'll give it to you free if you sign up for a mailing list. Okay. But like, you're trying to get interested people who aren't ready yet to sign up for your mailing list, because they might buy later. I mean, people. All right. So I'm going to say this brutally honestly.
Yes.
People have a lot of balls if they expect people to buy the first time they see somebody. Like, when is the last time you bought something the first time you saw it? Like, unless you really, really wanted it. Like almost never,
Yes.
it almost never happens. Now, my wife will go to a farmer's market and come back with some like artisanal honey or something like that she was able to taste first. But notice she tasted it first and loved it and then bought it. Plus, she's a sucker for that kind of thing. So there are people who are going to buy the first time. Like some people will buy the first time. But just like when you're running ads, like the first time you see somebody, like all you're trying to do is get to know them. When is the last time you signed an editor or something the first time you met them? Almost never. It almost never happens. And yet somehow we think that we're the magical human, that people are going to act differently than we act. And they're going to somehow buy all of our stuff. No, the reason I was really good at shows was I would do every show in Southern California. I would drive 2 hours to a show. At the beginning, it was great because suddenly people were seeing me sometimes 6 weeks in a row. And they were like, oh, okay, now I'll buy from you. But it was not just Russell magical. You know, there's a lot of shows I do that like people aren't buying from me, but a lot of them are coming back and someone that I've seen 3 or 4 or 5 times. One of the other cons of a show is that you'll see people who didn't buy but gave you a luff-off excuse, and then you'll see them 7 or 8 times and they'll just ignore you. And it kind of hurts because people are ignoring you because they didn't want to buy. They were just being nice. And now they're feel too guilty to actually just look you in the eyes and say they were never going to buy in the first place. So that's another con of shows. But the good of show is that you see somebody, if you do a lot of shows over and over again until they want to buy from you. Mm-hmm. But man, I cannot tell you how often I talk to people who are doing their first show and just the balls they have, the gall to think that everyone is going to stop the thing that they love. So if somebody likes Zelda and then they love, and I wrote a Zelda-like book like I did with my book Pixie Dust, like, is there a chance that they'll like Zelda? Yeah, my book. Yeah, it is. But it's more likely that they're there to get some cool Zelda fan art or something. And then they'll go home, look up me, and then maybe the next time they'll buy my book, or maybe they'll back the Kickstarter, or maybe they'll buy the book on launch. But while some people will buy in the moment, and there are ways to help you get people to buy in the moment, like offering a discount, the vast majority of people will not buy from you. Because they do not care about you, because you only entered their zone 3 minutes ago, and then all you were trying to do is sell them the whole time that you've known them.
I love it. Russell, you, I think, are particularly good at seeing another, like the seller's perspective, or I mean, the buyer's perspective. And I think that's just because of your experience in sales. I think most people come to this, and I've done this before myself, where it's like my book is all I'm thinking about. It is like my 100% what I'm thinking about. You know, I'm like, how do it's my whole life. And then when I go and interact with other people, I'm shocked when it's not their whole life because it's been my whole life.
You know, what's interesting though, is it's not your whole life. It's not even your whole life. Like my books are part of my whole life. They're part of my business life. We talked about like my wife and my dogs and the things that I like. I also like things that are not my work. Like I have been obsessed with Riverdale the past couple of weeks. Like I used to buy every Assassin's Creed game. There were conventions that I would go to as an attendee, and I had no interest in buying like X thing or Y thing. And the weird thing is that even though I now go and I almost exclusively buy independent comics or books, like that's all I buy. I don't care about anything else. Like I don't care about like the big displays or the other things. And if you go to a show, which you should do before you start exhibiting, you are going with some agenda in mind. And you'll probably look at all of the other stuff there and be like, who even cares about this?
Which is what everybody is thinking about yours.
That's what everybody is thinking of all of the time. Yes. Just scroll through your Facebook feed and it's constantly like, who cares about this stuff? I can't believe that you care about this stuff. Like somebody cares about this? Like the Super Bowl will have passed now, but people are talking about it because it is tomorrow in this scenario.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh yeah, people care about that. Weird.
I keep forgetting about it. And my husband does like to, we're doing something for it, I think. But I keep forgetting. Like today, I was like, oh yeah, it's tomorrow. Oh yeah.
And I used to love sports. And when I loved sports, there were other things that I just didn't care about. But we only have time in our lives for so many things. And the longer you give somebody to get to know you, the more they will like you. Seriously, there are studies out there that just standing next to somebody enough times will make them like you more. So the more like humans want, I was talking with Spike Trotman at Emerald City last year, and she said, I'd met her the year before, but then it had been a year and we hadn't talked. And she said, oh yeah, you left my monkey sphere, which is like, I only have room for 150 people. So you left it and now you're back and you're probably going to leave it again the next time. I had a guy named Ben Templesmith, who's a very famous artist, on a comic artist, on my show. And I met him at a bunch of shows, but I hadn't seen him in like a year. And he's like, I don't remember you. And I was like, that's okay. Yeah. You just have to see me a few more times. Yeah. But it's the same with all of the customers. And let's say you have a bunch of online fans who've never met you, doing one show can solidify that you exist and are a human, that they should that they should consider as more than just ones and zeros, words on a page.
I think that might be why, because you are better than most any other author that I've talked to about. There's a few other ones, but you're the best at considering your customers as not just customers, but as humans. And I think can you tell me, I think probably, but it might not be true, that it's because you've done so many shows. Like, your customers are real people because you've met so many of them in person. They aren't just a customer, like this idea of a person who's going to give you money. They're people.
Yeah, they are actually every person who bought. So our last launch had over 1,000 backers, but there are 1,000 humans. Like, it might seem like a big amalgamated number, but like each of them are their own individual humans. And by themselves, they only made up $20, $40. But in aggregate, like, that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't change the fact that they are all humans. And I try to remember that when people email me, or when people like ask me to do a show, or when like people complain, I'm like, it's just one person. It's only a $3 ebook. It's only $3. But I try to remember, like, they are a human who made a purchase, and I am also a human who makes purchases. And one thing that I love about meeting people in person, or seeing people in person, is you develop a real friendship with them. Like, there are people that I am as excited to see who are fans of mine as my best friends, because we just gab on like we're school children. And sometimes I'll write people into my story, or literal plot points. I'm like, she'll like this. This person, like Jen will like this. Carol will like this. And like, we'll do it for that one person. And it makes things so much more personal for your writing. Because I don't write for like my fans. I write for like humans that I actually know.
Which brings us back around to the beginning, when you're talking about knowing and doing market research. Like, it all comes back around. And I want to emphasize, for those people who have a hard time with sales, when you think of people as customers and as dollar bills, as I think you said in the previous interview that we did, it's harder to sell to them when you're a good person. because you don't want to think about people as just money. You want to think about people as people, which is actually good, because then if you do think about people as people who are making a choice to give you their time and money, it's a lot easier to build a relationship with them, which can then maybe lead to a sale or not. But the focus is the relationship, not the sale.
Let me bring this around a different way.
Okay, thank you.
We all want to buy from our friends, and we all want to buy things that are exciting and interesting to you. So when I go to shows, sometimes I'll be like, look what I made for you, to somebody. Like, I will literally be like, sometimes I'll go to shows and I'll bring like my old comics that I'm not reading anymore. And I'll be like, who's going to like this? Andrew's going to like this. Matt's going to like this. And I'm just like, look what I have for you. And I will literally just pull it out and be like, it's yours. Like, I was thinking about you when I read it. And I thought you would enjoy it. And those are the kinds of things that make shows fun. They're horrible at the beginning because nobody knows who you are. but they're great. But they're great to build a bond with somebody, to like show them that you mean business, that you're not just some like random person.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I don't do many shows anymore. I'm only doing like 9 this year, as opposed to like 26 I did last year and 48 a couple of years ago. It's real hard to go do shows when I can make money in my jammies. It's real tough when like I can send one email and like make $1,000. It's very, very hard to go to a show, and it's hard for everybody. And the people that actually go to the show and get up and stand behind that table have something over everybody who just sits home, which is like they're there. You literally, like 80% of this is just showing up. So if you literally just show up behind a table, you're putting yourself ahead of most people, because it's way easier. It's way easier to design an ad campaign than it is to go to a show and sit there for 3 days while most people ignore you. It's so much easier to learn how to like just publish an ebook than to actually print one and hold it in your hands and hand it to somebody and talk about it. It's so much easier. And one thing to sort of wrap this all up is that if you can learn to do shows, well, like sitting and being on Facebook for 5 hours a day is nothing. Like, it's like I would stand up and talk to people. This is literally just watching television and answering questions and emails. And like, this is so easy. It's brain power, but shows are brain power and physical power and emotional power and intellectual power. And whereas doing online sales is a mental game. It's like you have to know the mental part. You have to know better than when you're in shows, because at shows people will forgive a lot more because you're a human. It's just like when you're doing a messaging with like a Facebook, when you're messaging with like customer service or calling them, your propensity to be like nasty is way higher than in person. You expect more, even though they're the same humans on the other side. So when you're in person, you like have a lot more leeway to like screw up or fumble or something, or not hit it perfectly out of the park every time with each customer. As opposed to online, where you have to be basically perfect every single time. But the difference is you can test and make yourself perfect every time when you're online, as opposed to in person, where every interaction is different. Trying to get someone's attention is different. Even if they're the exact same person, what they did that morning is different. Like maybe one of them had a wonderful morning, the other one has been yelled at, or their mother is sick or something, and they're there for like whole different reasons. I've met people at shows who are there because like their son has cancer, and like they like just wanted him to have like a nice day out or something. Like he just went into remission. I've had people who like just got their house foreclosed on, but they bought tickets and they wanted to have one. Like, there's all sorts of things that people will tell you at a show, which makes every interaction more mentally taxing and more physically taxing. But when you learn that, like, the rest of this is easy, really. Like, it's so much easier to like talk to somebody as a human and like make your email sound like it's for one human, if you can actually picture a fan who you met and talked to on the other end of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've told that to a lot of people. I'm like, once you know somebody who's waiting for your emails, it makes it a lot easier. I want to ask you, since you're not doing as many shows, which I just want to note, I'm only doing 9 shows, is like, 7 or 8 more shows than most or 9 more shows than most authors are doing. But what are you doing now? What do you have going on now if you're not doing shows?
So instead of doing shows, I spent the last year and a half writing 21 novels, which I'm going to start releasing soon. So that is number one. Once this Kickstarter gets delivered, I'm going to be starting that in earnest. The second thing is I do book marketing, as you talked about a little before. So I do viral builders and giveaways where we try and build 3,000 to 5,000 people on a mailing list in about a week. all like super hyper targeted to a specific fandom. So right now we're doing Alice in Wonderland, and we're also doing Game of Thrones. So epic fantasy authors who are in our Game of Thrones one. I kind of don't know who's in the Alice one. I kind of am wondering like what, I mean, it's like my perfect fan is Alice, but like what genre is Alice? It's fantasy, but like psychological fantasy. I don't know. Anyway, there are fans of both of them, and so we're marketing them. And so I make money doing book marketing, which has been able to alleviate a lot of the shows. And then I also run a academy called The Complete Creative, which has courses on building a rabid fan base. We just launched one on Facebook ads. I have one on doing your own viral builders. I have a couple on Kickstarter. And then we have a blog and the archives for my own podcast, it's called The Complete Creative now. Actually, it is that we've rebranded the podcast as A Complete Creative, and they'll be coming out soon. So those are sort of the things. So I was able to take the money that I made in shows and be able to ease off of that and put it into all of this other stuff to give myself more time to write. And really, the two things that I'm doing is just releasing a lot more books, because when you don't have shows, you can release a lot more books because you have a lot more time. And then building up The Complete Creative, which is the daily blog and the teaching academy.
Okay. And I signed up and I've taken your viral builder course, and it was excellent. I haven't taken the other courses, but I was like, I could go run my own viral builders, except for that there's a lot of time involved, and I had other things happening. But
so it's so a lot of people, what they said was, I love this, especially the Facebook ads part. Can you just pull that out and make it its own, make it its own course? And so that is where the new Facebook ads course came from, people saying like they really like the Facebook ads targeting part of it.
Yeah.
And what I've done with the Facebook ads course is I've tried to make people understand the why behind Facebook ads, like make it a more holistic process, like a campaign, why people are clicking, how they're clicking, like the buyer mentality about like how Facebook ads work. Because most people just think that it's about getting the lowest cost per click, and then why did 1,000 people go to that site and nobody bought? So I didn't really want to record another Facebook ads course because, like, let's be fair, like, do we really need another Facebook ads course? Like, do we really need one? Like, that's what I was like, do we really need another one? You could literally find any other one. But like people really wanted
but people
my take
like it from you, Russell. It makes it like, I say that I'm like, do we really need another Coca-Cola or Pepsi or like they're like basically the same drink, but some people like one, some people like the other, and you know, and some people like you, Russell, some people like your Facebook ads course.
That's what I finally decided, because I've taken some Facebook ads courses and they're all fine. So like I kind of made it, and I'm able to. It's 4 hours. It's very intensive. It's a very comprehensive course. But I was like, do I really? But I was like, I don't know. Like, people keep asking me for it, and so I'm just gonna put it out there. And like, I think it's probably, well, I don't know. My Build a Rabid Fan Base course is probably my best course. This Facebook ads course is like the step 2. Because I have a little funnel now. So like I was like, well, okay, so if I did the Facebook, the group giveaway, the Facebook ads course, where would it slot in? And I feel like it slots in right after the Build a Rabid Fan Base course. So like this one's all about Build a Rabid Fan Base. It's all about what you can do for free to build a rabid fan base. And then the ads course is like how you can scale that up.
I like it. And the reason I like it is because I know your builder one. See, I like to organize things for other people. So I'm like, I'm going to do this viral builder course, and then I'm going to organize builders for other people. But most people don't want to take that initiative. They just want to buy into the builder that somebody else is organizing. Whereas Facebook ads, people can do it for themselves. And
yes, well, a lot of people don't want to do that, even though I still think that if I was to do it again, I would go back and I would do the same viral builders, because they can be done for very much cheaper, and you can start building your own audience from that. But a lot of people just want to know how to make profitable Facebook ads. So the course is called create profitable Facebook ads. However, throughout the course, I deconstruct how like an ad actually works and like what you need to actually do, which is more than just each ad. But people would ask me about Facebook ads, and I would say, just take the builder course. And they're like, I don't want to do builders. I just want the ads. And so the course is like, I think $400, $397, the Facebook ads course. But it is much, much, much more comprehensive about like the theory behind Facebook ads and also practically how to make them work, including how to find an image, how to reverse image search an image so you can find actually like where someone got a really compelling image, how to like test your ads, how to target properly, like all of the things that you need, but in a Russell Nohelty kind of way.
Yeah. And I think that's really important because then I really love that you've done the fundamentals around it. I'm going to call it the fundamentals around the Facebook ads, because then if things change a little bit, people understand why, or they can still work around it because they know the reasons behind it. Like,
yeah, like my friend was like, well, the problem with the Facebook ads course is that the minute that you make one, it's out of date.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, not if you discuss the fundamentals of it and go like granular on the fundamental part of it. And that's kind of my whole philosophy. Like I have a bunch of epic blog posts on the Complete Creative site. And they just like, it's like I have one 7,000 words about how to be the secret to becoming a self-published author, a successful self-published author. And it's just like people ask me the question, and I'm not just going to give like a half-hearted answer, like, but the answer that I give is going to be completely comprehensive about what you actually need to do.
Yeah.
But, you know,
and evergreen and true, because the principles don't change. It's like the principles of marketing don't change. The principles of like advertising don't change. It's like you need to know who your person is.
Right. Well, that's why I like the Build a Rabid Fanbase course first. So that's why I slotted it as I did. So the slot, like before that is the book. So on the website, I also have the Sell Your Soul, How to Build Your Creative Career book and audiobook. And that's like, what that does is it lays the blueprint of everything you need to know. But then people are like, okay, well, how do I actually put this into practice? And it goes from the book and the audiobook to the Build a Rabid Fanbase course, which is how to like find your perfect human and then make something you know they're going to love and then scale it to the moon. And then the next one is now like how to now take that thing and scale it through ads in your sleep. Always. Because now you know who your human is. And once you know who that human is, you can run ads to them successfully once you have all of the other pieces in place.
I love that, because there's no point in running ads when you don't know who your human is. It's just going to be very expensive.
It's going to be really it's a really expensive way. Yes. When a really cheap way is to go to shows and find it and do all of the things in the Build a Rabid Fanbase course. Yes. People always say that course is now $500. They're like, that's really expensive. I'm like, I don't know. I spent $100,000 making these mistakes. So it's $500 too much. So you don't make $100,000 of mistakes. I don't know. Like, I think that I would go back and I'd pay and pay that $500. But I totally understand people who want to suffer and do it themselves, because that's me. I'm a suffer and do it yourself kind of person, even if it takes 10 years. You know, they're like the Facebook ads. Like, I could have taken a Facebook ads course, but I figured I would suffer instead and figure it all out. And I probably could have taken a course and learned what I needed to know, but I decided to suffer. But I also knew that in the end of that suffering, part of why people buy my courses and like my brand, the Complete Creative nonfiction brand, is because I suffer so they don't have to.
Yeah. Also, you were very wise and very generous.
Well, yes, that's a piece of it. But I wasn't always. You know, when I got to be like very wise and generous and like generally likable at shows. I keep bringing it back to the shows because, like, I know that's what the topic of this discussion is, even though I just spent 10 minutes on all the other stuff that I do. It really started at shows. I mean, it really did. Like, I was a wholly unlikable person, but when I started doing shows, I had to figure out how to be likable so people like would not run away from me. and would actually buy from me because I put money down. I put $300 or whatever the cost of the table was. And I was like, I have to make that back. So I have to at least figure out how to be likable enough to enough people. So like they will like buy my thing. It was like that money on the line, which is like, oh crap, this is one great thing about a show is you put money on the line and you have to get as good as that money is. Otherwise you're going to lose it. So it gives you like a motivation to do it. It's like people do our builders. And one of the things I say is like, the best part about it is like, you're going to pay $50 or $100. You're going to get a list of thousands of people. And like, you better be ready for that list when it comes. It gets you motivated. Instead of having 20 people, you're going to have 2,000 people on that list like that. And you better be ready for like what's going to come next. And it gets you prepared for like, if you're not ready, the train's coming, like the builder's happening, like the show's happening. You better get there in time for it or it's going to roll you over.
That's what exactly this exact principle is what I was thinking when you're talking about people who say $500 is a lot. In my experience, when you invest the money, you're like, I don't want to lose this. I have to make this worth the money that I put into it, and you get it done. Versus when you could find all this information for free somewhere. Like it's all out there somewhere. Yeah, it's all out there somewhere.
Like I told you, I'm like, look, man, you can find all the information. Mm-hmm. Like, you know how I got all the information? I found it and then everything blew up in my face for like a decade until I finally learned.
Yes.
So like it's there. It is absolutely possible.
Yes, it's absolutely possible, but you can get help and there's a level of accountability and like speed. You're like, I'm not going to waste this. Like I just spent this. I'm going to use it. Like there's a motivation that comes with having spent the money.
Right. Well, the nice thing is like just like at a show when you can ask other people how to get better very quickly because you're now like in the group. When you buy a course or you do a builder, you're suddenly in a group of other people who are serious minded.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't believe this thing where people say like people are, when you spend more money, you are then like going to be more likely to use it because I know a bunch of people who buy my course and then never take it. I do think that it puts you around other people who are also serious like you. And that motivates you to step your game up. I came from DC, an independent film, and I thought I was hot shit. Like coming from DC, because like I would put the thing that I made up with anything that came from DC. But the minute I got off the train and the plane in LA, like reality stepped in and I was like, oh, I'm a nothing. This is not good enough. This is not even good enough to show. Like, what is like, this is like, like, this is where I'm at. And when you do a show, it's the same thing. Like you think you're hot shit writing your book in your room, but you go out and around your other group of friends who are at the same level as you. But you go to a show and suddenly you're up against Sherilyn Kenyon and Mark Miller and me and a bunch of people who've been doing this for years. And you're like, no, this is the competition. Like the competition is not my group of humans who are lovely, but like none of them are USA Today Bestselling Author or New York Times Bestselling Author. Like none of them have been working in New York publishing for 20 years. And you step into that convention center, like a big convention, like San Diego Comic-Con. And you're like, oh my God, Marvel's there. Like I forgot I have to compete with Marvel too. And all of these other people around me, like, and all of these artists and all of these things vying for money. Like it's daunting. But it gives you a reality check where like, oh, like this is the level I have to get at. Or maybe this is the level that I'm at now or something. It either validates you or like motivates you or demotivates you. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that it's real easy to think you're hot shit. Like in your room, in this room that I'm in right now, because I am the best writer in this room. Like I'm so good. And,
so good.
And all of the people that I know online, like I don't see their fan bases like standing. Like, I don't see their display. Like, I have tons of friends who are New York Times bestselling, like way better writers than me and way bigger fan bases. But when I'm online, I don't notice them. Like, I don't notice the fan base. I just notice the human. But then you walk past them at a show and they've got a line 30 people deep and a huge booth, and you're like, oh, you're hot shit. Like, I thought I was hot shit, but I am not. This is the next level. And a lot of what sparked my growth was like trying to get where the next person was in line. And that came from doing shows and being in front of them and wanting that person to see me as a peer. And so working to like be friendly with that person and help that person and like pull me up by the top of my head so that like suddenly I'm on this podcast, like for the second time.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't like 2 years ago, Russell couldn't have been here. I know we're probably reaching the end of time.
Yeah, we are. But
I have two things to say.
Yes.
For the end. The second to last is if Russell can get from nearly being bankrupt to where he is now in 2 years, never like having a modicum of talent that he just worked really hard at and a modicum of money, which he invested every last dollar in. Like, I almost lost this company too. Like, I was almost 5 for 5 in losing companies in my life, but somehow Wannabe Press just like that last gamble paid off, and it paid off because of shows. And I got those books in like December. I got this last set of books in October of 2016, and it was the last money that I had. And like all of the things that I learned went into this launch. And then suddenly people started buying them. And it wasn't because I suddenly got magically like richer or more popular. It was, or like, it wasn't like all that happened overnight. It's just all of that funneled into my ability to do this now. January 2016, I launched a course after spending $5,000 on it and made $100 on it. Still to this day, I've only made $190 on that course that I spent $5,000 on. Like, these book launches went from like 5,000 to 8,000 to 3,000 to 2,000 to 1,000. And then suddenly I got this like slingshot and we were able to like launch big. But that's only because all of the pieces that I learned fell into place. It was all of these pieces that I had gathered on my own podcast, or that I had got together, that I had got from someone else, that I had learned here and I learned there, and I learned from this guy at a show and learned from that girl at a show. And they all allowed me to launch a new product from scratch and be able to successfully do that. And most people have only known me since that time in 2017. They don't see the 10 years that it took to get there. Or even like the struggles that they are now. But I promise you, I am not more talented. I don't have more connections. I had one connection when I moved to LA. I don't like, all that happened was people told me what to do and I did it. And I kept showing up and showing up and showing up and making good products. And if I can do it, I swear to God, anybody can do it, because like, I am not a special snowflake.
Yes, you are, but we are all special snowflakes.
Yes. Okay. And the last thing that I will tell you is I have this giveaway going on, which I was telling Ella I was going to do, but I feel like you're going to be watching this probably months down the road. So I'm going to give you a different thing. So I have a free seminar, which is basically how to build an audience from scratch in 20 minutes with no extra money that you have to spend to do this. It shows you how to build your ideal customer avatar, because it's a very basic overview of all of this stuff. And you can get that if you go to www.thecompletecreative.com/audience.
Okay.
It's 20 minutes. It does not take a whole lot of your time, energy, or effort. just sit there as I say words to you, and a PowerPoint goes across your screen. And I really think if you're gonna do shows, that seminar is going to help you. If you're not going to do shows, that seminar is really going to help you. So it's thecompletecreative.com/audience.
Okay. And if you are listening to this right away, go find Russell on Facebook.
Yes. Really, the best thing is to join my Facebook group.
Yes.
Authors and creators making money selling books.
Yes. There is all kinds of amazing resources. And if you're listening to this right away, he has an amazing giveaway happening that you definitely want to check out. But if you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to, I'd say regardless, go check out the other free thing as well. Because you can tell
it's not going to go away. Like it's a fundamental thing. It tells you basically how to build a sales funnel for yourself with your audience, from one person to many people.
Russell is amazing. And I love chatting with you, Russell. I love chatting with you because we're like, we have the same things that we want to teach people with totally different voices. And I just love
that's awesome. That's the awesome thing about this thing. When you really talk to people, it's like there's a space for both of us, and there's a space for you too. Everyone who's listening, like there's a space for you too in this world, because people need your voice. All I'm trying to help you with, and Ella's trying to help you with, is to get that voice and share with get that voice honed. So my voice did not come fully formed like this. It was honed through dozens of shows, 100+ shows, and tens of thousands of people talking with tens of thousands of people. It was honed to be what it is today. So all we're trying to do is get you is hone your voice and then share your message with as many people as possible.
And that's what we're going to end the show on. Amen. Thank you so much, Russell, for being here.
You're welcome.
Hugs and happy authoring to everybody who's listening. We appreciate you. Bye. Hey, boss, you made it to the end of the episode. You're the best. Because of that, I'm going to give you a special invitation to find out more about the Author Boss Academy, where I and a bunch of really awesome authors hang out, have fun, and get stuff done. If you end up joining, tell me the secret word and you'll get a special bonus. Find out more about the Academy at authorlikeaboss.com/academy. The secret word is nipples. Hugs and happy authoring. I hope to see you soon.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.